Hidden in the heart of Accra sits one of Africa's most powerful historical landmarks, a castle that has witnessed centuries of global trade, colonial rule, and presidential power. Yet today, one question remains. Why is one of Ghana's most valuable tourism assets? It has only recently begun opening, but remains largely underutilized.
The Promise. This is Osu Castle, also known as Christiansborg. For over 3 centuries, this fortress has stood at the center of history, a European trading post, a colonial headquarters, and eventually, the seat of Ghana's presidency. But beyond its past, this castle may represent something even bigger today, one of the most powerful, untapped tourism investments in Africa. This is no longer a question of access. It is a question of scale, because opening the doors is only the first step. Setting the scene. Accra is changing fast, from vibrant markets to modern skylines. This city has become a gateway between Africa and the world. Millions pass through. Investments are rising. Global attention is growing. And yet, sitting quietly along this coastline is a structure that connects centuries of global history, a fortress whose story stretches across continents. Global significance. What makes Osu Castle different is not just its age, it's its global footprint. This is not a local story, it is an international one. From these shores, decisions were made that shaped trade across the Atlantic, routes that connected continents, movements that changed millions of lives. The castle stands as a silent witness to one of the most defining periods in world history. And today, in an era where travelers are searching for meaning, places like this hold a different kind of power, not just economic value, but emotional, cultural, and educational significance.
The experience gap. Now compare that to what exists today. In London, millions visit the Tower of London every year. In the United States, travelers line up to explore Alcatraz Island. These are not just buildings, they are experiences. Guided storytelling, immersive exhibitions, carefully designed visitor journeys. Now imagine arriving in Accra, standing just outside Osu Castle, and realizing, today, visitors can step inside parts of the castle, but what they experience is just a fraction of its full potential. That gap between potential and reality is where the real opportunity lives.
The historical story. The story begins in the 1600s, a time when European powers competed intensely. Along the West African coast, fortresses like this were built to control trade and assert influence. Over centuries, the castle changed hands. Portuguese, Danish, British, and like many coastal forts, it became tied to the complex and painful history of the transatlantic trade. But the story didn't end there. The presidential era. In 1957, Ghana gained independence, and the castle entered a new chapter. For decades, this was the seat of power. Presidents governed from these walls. National decisions were made here. This was not just history anymore. It was leadership. It was nation building. Few places in Africa combine colonial history, political authority, and architectural heritage in one location.
Present day. Today, the role has changed. Since government operations moved, much of the complex has only recently begun opening to visitors. But the full experience is still far from what it could be. For many visitors, it is a mystery, seen from the outside, but rarely experienced from within. And that brings us back to the question.
Tourism economics. Around the world, historic sites generate billions, not just through entry tickets, but through entire ecosystems, events, merchandise, cultural programming, education. Tourism today is not just about numbers. It is about value per visitor. And heritage tourism is one of the fastest growing sectors globally. People are no longer just looking for beaches. They want stories, connection, meaning. The opportunity is no longer about opening Osu Castle to the world. It's about unlocking its full value. Around the world, heritage is not just preserved, it is monetized. Strategically, take the Tower of London, for example. Millions of visitors pass through its gates every year. But the real revenue goes far beyond entry tickets. There are guided experiences, exclusive tours, souvenirs, events, and educational programs. The same applies to Alcatraz Island. What was once a prison is now one of the most visited attractions in the United States. The lesson is simple. Historic sites are no longer just places you visit. They are platforms for storytelling, engagement, and revenue generation. And this is where the real opportunity lies. Because tourism today is not about how many people arrive. It's about how much value each visitor generates. A single, well-designed heritage experience can multiply spending per visitor 3, 5, even 10 times. Deeper economic breakdown. Imagine this in practical terms. A visitor arrives in Accra. They don't just take a photo and leave. They buy a guided tour. They visit a museum inside the castle. They attend a cultural performance. They purchase locally made crafts. That single visit now supports multiple layers of the economy. Tour guides, artists, historians, vendors, creative entrepreneurs. This is how modern tourism works. Not as a single transaction, but as an ecosystem. And right now, that ecosystem around Osu Castle is only partially built. Investment opportunity. With the right vision, Osu Castle could become one of West Africa's most powerful cultural destinations. Imagine this: guided historical tours, world-class museums, interactive storytelling experiences, cultural festivals, educational programs, global collaborations. Not just a site, but a destination. So what would it take to unlock its full value? Not just access, but experience. Imagine walking into the castle and being guided through a fully immersive journey. Rooms transformed into interactive exhibitions. Stories brought to life through sound, visuals, and technology. Not just information, but emotion. Imagine night tours with cinematic lighting, live historical reenactments, diaspora storytelling experiences, global heritage conferences hosted within these walls. Now imagine that happening every single day. This is where the numbers begin to change. Because when a site evolves from a landmark into an experience, revenue multiplies, ticketing becomes dynamic, experiences become premium, events become global, and suddenly, one location begins to generate millions annually, not by replacing history, but by presenting it in a way the world is willing to pay for. Strategic advantage. And here's the advantage. Location. Right in the center of Accra. Minutes from hotels, restaurants, beaches, nightlife. This is rare. A heritage site. Embedded inside a living, breathing city. Morning, history. Afternoon, exploration. Evening, entertainment. A complete tourism journey. And Osu Castle has one advantage many global sites don't. Location. Right in the heart of Accra. Accessible. visible, connected to everything. This is not a remote destination. It is a central piece of the city's story, cultural power. But this goes beyond tourism. It's about storytelling. Imagine the castle hosting Pan-African exhibitions, diaspora homecoming experiences, global heritage conferences. This is how places become symbols, not just visited, but remembered. Now zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Ghana has already positioned itself as a global destination for heritage tourism. Visitors travel across the world to experience Cape Coast Castle and walk through the rainforest canopy at Kakum National Park. Each of these sites tells a story, but in the capital city itself, there is a missing centerpiece, a flagship experience that brings everything together: history, politics, culture, identity. Osu Castle could be that centerpiece, emotional connection. Because for many people around the world, this is not just a destination. It is a connection to ancestry, to identity, to history. And in today's world, that connection is one of the most powerful drivers of travel. Osu Castle is more than a building. It is a symbol of Ghana's past, its resilience, and its future. Because sometimes the most valuable assets are not the ones we build. They are the ones we already have, waiting to be rediscovered. And right here in Accra, one of those assets is just getting started. If you found this surprising, wait until you see the next video in this series.